You're a big Jeopardy fan. Do you like Ken Jennings?
I miss Alex.
What's your hesitation? Well, you miss Alex. Yeah, of course, everybody misses Alex. I'm sure Ken Jennings misses Alex.
I think he does a good job. I would have rather seen Will Ferrell in this character from Celebrity Jeopardy on SNL.
And he's just angry at all the contestants at their ignorance and very frustrated that they don't know anything.
He's really just disappointed. It's the best. They're just
and the guy imitating Sean Connery.
He's on almost all of them. It's great.
They're so funny.
Anal bum cover. That's an album cover. The other one that's gold is when he goes, I'll take the rapists for 200. And he goes, that's therapists.
Quiet, please.
And there's one, it was one of the last episodes, I think, of it's Final Jeopardy. Sean Connery, like you see the top half of the drawing and you can't really tell what it is. And they show the bottom half, which is where you're normally writing your bet.
Yeah.
And Alex Trebek goes, oh, that's me having sex with a horse.
In 4, 3, 2.
Company presents a truly terrible podcast. Welcome to Nonsense Season 2, Episode number 1. I'm Jeff Parker.
I'm the other guy. What's my name?
This is our take on the week's business, tech, and entertainment headlines. This time, we're going to talk about fixing things that aren't broken.
Which I would think that this entire podcast qualifies for. Did you just gloss over the fact we made it to Season 2? You just like slipped that right in there?
We made it Season 2, but we were a day late. Look around you. It's Friday. It's not Thursday.
I like
it. Smells different in here, doesn't it? It's kind of nice.
We're starting off the season on the wrong day already. Is this like an omen? I don't understand.
I have no idea, but it's my fault because of a technical problem. We actually have recorded this part of this show once.
What Jeff doesn't appreciate is that in order to record a podcast, you actually have to record a podcast. You can't just talk at a microphone. You have to actually press the buttons that make it record.
This version, hopefully you'll actually be able to hear. It's National Bird Day.
What does that mean?
While birds are amazing, they're also a massive animal group under particular threat. And the phrase canary in a coal mine was named after birds for a reason. They're the barometers of our planet's environmental health. It's more important than ever to raise public awareness of the needs of birds. The survival of hundreds of species depends on.
I don't want to start out this show on the wrong foot, but I just want to say that I don't much care for pigeons.
Okay.
Can I celebrate National Bird Day, but then have a carve out for pigeons?
Have you ever been to Trafalgar Square in London and seen,
no.
They're gone now, but there used to be a gazillion pigeons and it was really fun.
What happened to them?
All the kids would run through the pigeons. Well, I think they got rid of them all. They probably poisoned them or did something.
Oh, that's terrible.
Now you go to Trafalgar Square, there's no pigeons.
Did they unionize? Maybe the pigeons all like got together and unionized. Like, we're not going there anymore until you pay us better.
It's also Carver Day, one of the rare national days that commemorate an African-American figure. It started in 1947 in honor of George Washington Carver, a noteworthy agricultural scientist and inventor. It not only celebrates this remarkable innovator who was part of a marginalized community, it also honors his invention, which ended up helping farmers around the country and produced enough food to keep the United States sustained during the Second World War.
That's amazing.
Creative crop rotation.
Yeah. And then like he's like the peanut in the sweet potato king.
Exactly.
I had no idea it was Carver Day. I'm going to choose to celebrate Carver Day and pass on National Bird Day.
Birds might help crops somehow.
I'm sure they do.
I don't know how.
Let me tell you, I've got what I believe to be one or more birds currently in my backyard that are major pests because they are eating my furniture and it's driving me fucking crazy.
How do they eat your furniture?
They like pick at the cushions.
You should have never bought the cushions made of birdseed.
Okay.
That was a mistake.
Where were you when I purchased it? At Crate and Barrel.
Mr. Smart Guy.
Crate, Barrel, and Seed is the store that I went to. I believe they're upset at me because there are several places that the birds would like to make a nest in my backyard, and I've covered all those places up.
Oh, yeah.
And now I think they're pissed, so now they're just eating stuff. And
they're
they've
taking
destroyed
parts
several
of
cushions.
the stuffing for their nests. Is that what's happening? Yeah.
Yes. It makes me very grumpy.
Birds like nice nests. You might put out some things that they can take, a nice, like a craft table of various things they might want for their nests.
Like a bird charcuterie board. Like
exactly.
Just put out,
just things they might want.
Here's some string. Here's some human hair.
Exactly. Some cotton. Whatever you think they might want
whatever
to make
you
their
would
nest
like.
nice.
It's like
some glitter if they want to decorate.
In honor of Carver Day, it's like crop rotations. It's bird nesting rotation. Put out maybe some Tempur-Pedic foam in case they're older birds.
I think that's fantastic. I think totally you should do that.
I've learned something today. You know what? I'm going to choose to celebrate National Bird Day by giving them a charcuterie board of equipment.
And in doing so, save your furniture. How's your week going?
You know, I'm just always amazed. Here we are at the start of a new year at how Southern California, we just
Happy New Year, by the way.
Yeah, Happy New Year. 2 weeks with no show. It was awkward. And I will say, our folks at home can't see this. I miss your beard.
Did you walk around talking to yourself?
I did. And it turns out I'm really fucking annoying. I had no idea. I feel enlightened this year. I'm sure I'll get over it. Don't worry. I'm always amazed at how we manage every year. I've been here, 25 years I've been living in Los Angeles. How we just pull our shit together on January 1st and the sun is beautiful. There's no clouds.
It's remarkable.
Warm. There's no rain. Out. And then it's like we do this just for the Rose Parade. And the Rose Parade happens happens. Everyone's like, oh, look at how lovely it is. And I'm like, yeah, you're not here. You don't see us when we're alone the other 364 days a year. And the 405 is stopped and it's smoggy and all the other shit.
Oh, the Rose Parade was originally created to sell real estate.
Yeah, I didn't know that.
They were trying to show the rest of the world how good the weather was here. Hey, you ought to move here. We can sell some real estate. It's just beautiful here. It's icy and snowy on January 1st where you live. But man, if you lived here, isn't it just beautiful?
Did the original proprietors of the Rose Parade make enough sacrifices to Mount Wilson for good weather that it's just continued on forever?
I don't know how it works, but they get so lucky.
There had to be a genie in a bottle involved.
You can have torrential rains
the day before
on December 31st and torrential rains on January 2nd. But on January 1st.
On the 1st, it's gorgeous. It's always gorgeous.
Yes. Some deal with the devil has been made and it's perfect.
Anyway, so my favorite parts of that aren't just watching the game, which was fun.
It was a really fun game this year.
Yeah. And the parade, which is always a blast, but the flyover. So like I like to sit on my phone and track the B-2 flying over and it's a little voyage over for the flyby, which is pretty cool.
You have to put a link in the show notes of what the B-2 looks like, pictures of the B-2.
Oh yeah, for sure.
It looks like a 1940s spacecraft.
Shouldn't fly.
It's such interesting looking designs.
And it's even more amazing when you see it flying with your own eyes because it looks, when it's coming at you, it just looks like a line. It looks like a two-dimensional line.
Oh yeah.
Sorry, it looks like, no, wrong. It looks like a one-dimensional line coming at you and then it flies over. You're like, oh, it's a wing. If you want to get technical about it, you can't see it with your eyes unless it's 3 dimensions. It needs to have a width and a height and a depth because you're actually seeing.
There does have to be a width. That's true.
So it's 3 dimensions.
We changed our podcast. We're not just doing nonsense tech stories. Now we're doing beginning mathematics.
No, beginning geometry. A plane has 2 dimensions.
The amazing thing to me about the flyovers, and I've seen a lot of them because they do them for baseball and opening day, and I've seen a lot of various events, is that they manage to time their flyover perfectly.
Yeah.
So that the national anthem is just finishing. It's on the last note as they go flying over, and it's like, wow, how do you do that?
Well, if they fuck up, they can't change they can't change the speed of the plane. The person's got to speed up when they're singing at the very end.
They don't. They don't.
They get it down. Well, you figure you sing the song. The song's within a couple seconds, so the planes can vary their speed. They know what time they're gonna arrive. They're very good at that.
But they're also the part I didn't know is that they're also off in the distance just flying circles
in a holding pattern. What did you think happened?
I don't have any idea. I thought they
just
took off. All right, take off right now. Go. Oh, faster. Oh no, slow down. Faster. He's getting to the words.
The B-2
I don't know how it works.
Just sitting on the runway in Missouri, just going, okay, we got to leave. Right. Oh, fuck, we're 30 seconds late. We're gonna miss it.
But it's always so perfect. It's like, how do they do that? Oh, now of course I know how they do that, but it's still impressive.
The holding patterns are always fun to see. If you ever see a plane outside of an airport just in a holding pattern, usually something very bad has happened. That's not a normal occurrence.
Oh yeah, they're dumping fuel in Los Angeles over the 405 so that my car will have destroyed paint.
Well, that's why I always carry a funnel in the back, just in case I want to capture some kerosene.
Capture it out of the air.
Just get a little kerosene to throw in my car.
My week, thank you for asking.
How's your week? I forgot this show's 2 people. I always forget that.
Very quickly, you forget how the show even works. My week was great. I was on vacation and had a great time.
Oh yeah, where'd you go for vacation?
I know. Hawaii. Go
ahead, big surprise! Everybody take a drink. Everybody take a drink.
I got home and my cables had arrived. I'm switching from USB 3.2 to USB 4. But the important part of the cable switch is not the 3.2 to 4, although it's terribly important in my mind because it's both Thunderbolt 4 and USB 4, which is great. Also, cables nowadays are coming labeled with what they are on the ends. And that makes me so happy I can't tell you. The crazy, psychotic person that I am, that labeling makes me so happy that I can see exactly what it is and not be wrong.
It's really, it's a testament to humanity that anybody listens to this show where I'm sitting here talking about planes flying around. You're talking about cables that are labeled.
Cables!
That are USB 4. Even though, and I know the answer to this question, I'm going to ask you anyway. How many USB 4 devices do you have currently on your desk?
0, not 1.
0.
I am the king of deferred maintenance.
Okay.
I really do
wait a minute.
Put my focus elsewhere, and I do not think about cables, and I will not think about cables for years. And then all of a sudden I've got a mishmash of 1,000 different types of USB cables, and they're not labeled, and I have no idea what they are, and it makes me crazy. So I just, this year was just like the year that I'm straightening this mess up, and I'm getting ready for the future.
Did you color code them?
No, I didn't color code them. They come labeled. They come like I don't know how they do it. Silk screening. I have no idea.
Did you have them? No, they're embroidered.
They come labeled, which is
the good
great.
ones are all embroidered.
They're embroidered.
Yeah.
You go to Etsy for your cables, don't you?
I do. I'm
That's
definitely
lovely.
doing it. They're $300 each, but it is really nice, and they have that nice little finish on them.
Let's get to our headlines.
We should.
Apple Watch has been banned. Well, that was banned, and then it was unbanned. A patent infringement case is pushing for Apple to stop selling its 2 most recent Apple Watch models, the Series 9 and the Ultra 2.
Yeah.
The website froze sales as of December 21st, and they disappeared from physical Apple Store shelves before the ban officially went into effect on December 26th. Apple's appealing the ruling, and as of December 27th, the ban has been temporarily paused. paused, allowing the sales of watches to resume.
I feel like this is a +1 in the Apple PR department. Actually, no,
seems
it
like
would
a
be Apple,
fabulous little marketing stunt.
Yeah, marketing. Yeah, they're like, oh, we can't. If you want one of these for Christmas, you got to buy it now. It's
Got to
be
buy
gone
now.
soon.
Here, there's urgency. There's urgency.
And then literally 2 days later, they're like, just kidding.
They're back.
You can get them whenever you want. They're back. I feel like somebody in the marketing department finally watched a documentary on Beanie Babies.
Yeah.
And the whole Beanie Baby.
Yeah, yeah,
and
yeah.
Like, oh, let's create some scarcity. And
Create some artificial urgency.
Tim wasn't reading his email that day, so Tim was just like, yeah, sure, whatever. Go, Beanie Baby. Sounds great.
I think these things totally work. Now, this would be interesting to see if this is actually a lawsuit. In the end of last year, the final quarter of last year, and I'm sure the first quarter of this year, I'm guessing all the lawsuits wrong.
What do you mean?
I guessed Epic v. Google 100% wrong. I never thought that Epic would prevail.
Yeah, okay. And what do you think's going to happen on this one?
I look at this and I say, well, Massimo must have its suit together, must have its act together because they've been at this for 3 years, fighting it hard. They have other companies who have lost this suit against them and are now paying them licensing fees. And I have a feeling that just because that's my recent history, that Apple will prevail.
Yeah, I don't know. I'm betting on Apple on this one. Oh, you're like the Schrodinger's cat of picking lawsuits. Just don't look in the box and everything's fine.
So did you run out and buy any Apple Watches? Did you get your Apple Watches quickly before they went off the shelves for 3 days?
I did not. I have taken a different approach to Apple Watches than the rest of my devices. I wait until my children ruin them and then I buy a new one.
Okay. How do your children ruin the watches? They're hard to ruin. They're tough little things.
You know what? I don't know. My last one, I don't know how he did it. My son, when he was much younger, my oldest son, dropped it on the floor or something, but he was he had it for no more than 20 seconds and he shattered the entire screen. I was like, all right, buy a new watch.
I have a Fossil watch, but I assume it's made out of similar things. It's a smartwatch that runs the Wear OS Android's version of the thing. And I drop that thing all the time, and I can't scratch it or dent it or do anything. Whatever that sapphire is that's covering, and I'm sure Apple has the same thing. It's indestructible.
I'm sure the Apple one's better.
Well, of course
I
it
would
would
assume.
be.
I mean,
it's white.
It's white, exactly. So got to be better. It's 3 times the money. How can it not be better? It must be better. Yeah. So these guys, Massimo has made some money off this in the past. They've made billions of dollars off this particular patent.
Billions of dollars. Massimo is a tiny company who's made billions of dollars off of this patent.
Yeah. Well, they're not that. I mean, they're tiny, but they're not tiny. Like they're hundreds of employees still.
When you put them, hold them up next to Apple, they're tiny. Hold them up next to Philips, they're tiny.
Who can you hold up next to Apple and go, wow, that's a big company? I'm pretty sure the answer is none of them, right? Microsoft. Basically, exactly. I mean, who else has a $3 trillion or near $3 trillion market cap? You're like, oh,
Microsoft.
Basically, it's Microsoft. Close. Right? So who knows? We'll see.
Faux scarcity is a beautiful marketing thing.
Right?
Mickey Mouse has left the house. Steamboat Willie enters the public domain. As of January 1st, 2024, the earliest version of the character seen in the 1928 animation Steamboat Willie and Plain Crazy can finally be used and referenced by anyone in the U.S. without Disney's permission, alongside of other characters like an early version of Minnie Mouse and Peg-Leg Pete.
We need more Peg-Leg Pete in our life.
Have you started making your public domain Peg-Leg Pete things?
Well, I'm waiting for the later version to come out. Polio Pete, he was my favorite.
Okay, I missed that one.
Yeah, no, a lot of people, they were big. Walt was big into the alliterations back then.
There were some years in cartoons where I was not paying attention, obviously.
Yeah, the Polio Pete were the darker years. Now, this is super interesting, right? Because a lot of folks suspected that, I think yourself included, that Mickey Mouse, Disney would never let Mickey Mouse enter the hands of the public domain.
Right.
And here we are with the earliest incarnation of Mickey Mouse. And
right. The interesting thing about it is they've split it up so that Mickey Mouse is like a different character every time they drew him. And so you're good up through 1928 Mickey Mouse, but 1929 Mickey Mouse, that copyright's still valid. So really they've managed to preserve the copyright for much longer than normally they would be able to. It's kind of ingenious what they've done.
They took a look over that Microsoft Office licensing and they're like, oh no, you've got the 1928 Mickey Mouse.
Exactly.
1929. By the way, what happens in 70 years when you can get like, Office 2008 now, that copyright's expired. It's got to go to the public domain.
Why do I want that?
I mean, well, who knows?
It's of no interest.
You could remix it into Office 2073.
At least Steamboat Willie Mickey Mouse was funny. He was cute. And by the way, you know who voiced him?
I don't.
Who made it? Who was his voice?
Oh wait, Morgan Freeman.
Yes, Morgan Freeman was the voice. No, in 1928, the voice of Mickey Mouse was Walt Disney.
Was it Walt? Was nobody else to do it?
That falsetto voice you hear is Walt Disney.
Oh, that's funny.
Yeah,
probably recorded somewhere not far from us.
Oh, no doubt.
Right? Were they in Burbank then, or are they still in Atwater? Maybe it was in Los Feliz. It was like Los Feliz, Atwater.
Okay, well, it's four minutes away. It's not like
what kind of fucking helicopter you have? When's the last time you got from Burbank to Atwater in 4 minutes? 3 in the morning, you can't do that.
It's just not far.
No, it's not far. We used to live nearby many years ago. Alex and I lived nearby the cottages.
Oh, yeah.
In Los Feliz.
For sure.
They're still there. And I'm always like,
And they're
that
still
would be
there,
a cool place to live. Yeah.
And hopefully they stay there because it's such a great little piece of history.
I hope so, right? Can you imagine like living like your apartment in Hollywood is where
The old-
Walt Disney
Now,
drew Fantasia?
Although I think it's always interesting, any apartment you rent in Los Angeles proper, not the Valley, any apartment that you rent, they will tell you this is where Charlie Chaplin lived.
Was this place built in 1980? Oh, yeah. It was the lighter years of his life.
He was quite old at the time. Okay, enough with the headlines. Up next, CJ is going to talk about fixing things that aren't broken.
So if it's not broken and then you want to fix it, the thing to do is just put the word new in front of it and re-release it.
Oh, okay. Upgrade it.
That's the story.
Improve.
That's what I've heard.
Good. Let's do it.
Improved. No, you don't improve it. You don't make it better. You just call it new.
Okay. New and the same. New and the same.
Exactly. Is there any chance that you know about Project Kansas?
Not any chance. There is zero chance I know about Project
Zero
Kansas.
chance?
No.
I think I know how this is going to go. Are you familiar with the development of 7X-100?
No.
All right, great start. Let's try an easier one. What were you doing on Tuesday, April 23rd, 1985?
Reading Shel Silverstein's A Light in the Attic and listening to We Are the World? How would I know?
Man, season 2 is off to a great start, isn't it?
I don't know what I was doing.
Aren't we just crushing
How
it?
would I remember that?
I don't know. I got to start the segment somehow.
What am I, Mary Lou Henner? Who do you think I am?
I'm glad you made the Mary Lou Henner joke because, by the way, when you ask her that question,
She knows.
She looks up for a minute and then she goes, "I was wearing a green sweater."
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
And I was recording an episode of Taxi. Like she knows everything about that thing. She's absolutely fascinating. I thought I'd start out the new year and our new season by retelling a version of a tale that is as old as time itself. Right? The ever sweet quote: "If it ain't broke, don't fix it" story.
Okay.
Well, that and it's the quote, "Let's make lemonade out of lemon" story too. It's a twofer.
It's just cliche city today.
It's cliche city. Oh, it's about to get a lot fucking worse. So buckle up, buddy.
Okay.
Yeah, that's just the preamble. This is a story about what was at the time a 100-year-old staple, not just here in the U.S., but worldwide.
Staple being like a food product that we all just have eaten or something that's a part of our world.
You got to figure it out. You're going to figure it out here pretty quick.
All right.
I mean, yeah. It's. I would stop short of calling it any one particular product. You'll see why in a second because it's a thing. It's a thing literally everyone knows. I guarantee you, especially today, there's a person in every country that knows this product, right? Many people.
All right.
Okay,
Good
so
deal.
let's set the stage. It's 1985. We're currently being serenaded with lots of beautiful saxophone and Careless Whisper from Wham. Great song.
Okay.
And electrosynth in Like a Virgin from Madonna. They were both top of the charts.
Yeah.
Right?
You sent me while you were writing this episode, you sent me a Spotify playlist with these songs. And it was so good. I can't tell you how much I enjoyed it. It was so
it good?
much fun.
Oh, God. I'm so glad you liked it.
It's great.
It's what I listened to when I got the idea to do this segment this way. It's what I listened to put me in the, quote, mood for 1985.
It was great.
There's some really great hits in there. 1985 was a pretty prolific year, which is just my way of saying
Musically, yeah.
we're fucking old. No. Not musically. Musically but what I'm going to say next. We watched the birth of at least two epic franchises that year. Michael J. Fox and Christopher Lloyd in
Back to the Future.
And Eddie Murphy in
Beverly Hills Cop.
1985. Now, I also fell in love with a bunch of amazing films that released that year that each of these have really truly shaped me as a person. And this would be The Goonies, Fletch, Brewster's Millions, the Richard Pryor version, Spies Like Us, Starman, which is a film I still reference all the time and nobody gets.
Sure.
Police Academy 2, and of course, another Gutenberg classic, Cocoon.
Oh, yeah, sure.
All 1985, right? Long before Wilford was talking about the diabetes.
Okay.
Way back then. Okay, this is more fun for you, I think. The Commodore 128 was introduced.
Yes.
With how much, do you remember how much RAM it had?
128 kilobytes.
128 kilobytes of RAM. Nintendo released the NES in North America.
Yeah.
Microsoft Windows 1.0 was introduced.
Oh, wow.
Now these last
Did you ever see it? Have you ever seen Microsoft Windows 1.0?
I have. It's incredible.
Oh, it's incredible. Ridiculous.
Richard Stallman created the Free Software Foundation.
And super important thing. We mock Richard Stallman.
I know we do mock him.
That one creation really changed the world.
Landscape of the world for technology for sure. This next one you're going to love too. And the first C++ reference guide was published by whom?
Bjorn Strassop.
So that was all. This is all in 1985. And by the way, there's a ton more things that are interesting that happened. I just picked the cherry picked the ones I thought you and I would be most interested in.
Yeah.
Let's see. Coca-Cola remained the world's best-selling soft drink.
Okay.
But rival Pepsi-Cola continued to gain market share thanks in part to its aggressive Pepsi Challenge campaign. In which consumers took blind taste tests and were surprised to learn they preferred the flavor of Pepsi over the incumbent, Coke,
because it's
right?
sweeter. And so when you have a small sample, you prefer the sweeter. But when you drink 12 ounces, you prefer the ones that are a little less sweet.
Well, 12 ounces. 12 ounces is like a small today, right? Back then it was a large. Now 12 ounces is like a shot.
Same size. That
when you
comes
get
in
to
a
the
can.
64 ounces, it turns out you really like the sweeter diabetes. By the way, to the shock of Coca-Cola, internal taste tests yielded the same result.
Oh, of course. People prefer the sweeter when they have a smaller sample, of course.
Company executives grew convinced that it was the soda's taste and not its rival advertisement targeting the, quote, Pepsi generation. And that was the reason for its declining market share, right? For Coca-Cola's declining market share.
Yeah.
They felt that it was the taste.
They were dead wrong, by the way.
Yeah, that's what this story's about.
When you drink a whole 12-ounce can, you people like Pepsi. People like Coke.
Sure.
But someone who likes Coke, if they're drinking a whole can, they will always pick the Coca-Cola.
So this story is pretty fun. I'm going to tell a couple nuances of the story that I'd be kind of surprised if you knew, because I certainly didn't know them, and you and I both lived through it. Since its introduction in 1886, Coca-Cola's secret recipe has been tweaked several times, right? Such as when changing sweeteners from cane sugar to beet sugar and into corn syrup, or when, for example, they took out the cocaine, which, quote, by 1929, the decocainization process was perfected.
Okay.
The decocainization process wasn't perfected until 1929.
Fantastic.
So from like 1902 to like 1929, you were still getting some Coke in your cocaine, which I just...
Very small
still
amount,
getting some cocaine in your Coke.
Yeah.
Okay, but through it all, one thing has been consistent, which is that the taste had remained constant. And while the company was developing the unique formula for Diet Coke, which was introduced in 1982, it found in top secret taste tests that a sweeter version of the concoction beat not only Pepsi, but the classic version of Coke itself.
In small sipping taste tests.
In taste tests, yes,
right.
Exactly.
It's not the same thing as having a can.
And it was then that the executives at Coke decided to make a risky change and just go all in.
Yeah.
And after all, Pepsi was destroying Coke in taste tests, and Coke had been sort of flagging in sales for a while. So that's why they're like, all right.
Well, there were other reasons too. There also, if you look back at that time, there was a story of some, and I don't remember what part of the world it was. It wasn't the U.S. A kid who claimed he got ill and then his dad said he died from having mold in the can.
Ugh.
Now, if you know anything about the canning process, you know this isn't true. And Coke PR people handled it so badly. They handled it like scientists. Yeah. And just were like, no, he didn't die from mold in the can. There's no mold in the can. It's not possible to have more in the can. And they could have just, paid for the kid's burial or done something nice or and they just didn't, and it was
dug in.
So there were some things that were happening even before they were getting challenged by that Pepsi taste challenge that were not handled particularly well.
Well, maybe that's what your segment should be on next week.
I will do Herman Lay's salty snack business.
I don't even know what that is, but it sounds amazing.
Lay's potato chips. You know about Herman Lay?
Oh, Herman Lay.
Yeah.
You mean those are amazing and addictive? Like, I feel like they're up there in the same
salty snacks. He tried to sell it to Coca-Cola.
Really?
We'll tell all this, and it didn't end up. You know who he sold it to?
Wait, hold on. I should know. Well, it's Lay's potato chips. Frito.
He merged with Frito and ran the combined Frito-Lay company, but he sold to Pepsi.
Pepsi, that's right. Yeah, Pepsi. Yeah, Pepsi, Frito-Lay. Where you should have got there. Oh, that's so funny.
So sorry. Back to your story. I'm so sorry to interrupt.
By the way, what drives soda consumption more than salty snacks?
Of course.
Okay.
But it's not as profitable because you're not shipping little bags of syrup around.
Of course.
You're actually shipping objects.
Yeah. Volume. Sergio Zyman, the executive behind the success of Diet Coke, was tasked with starting what would become a 4-year-long secret project to find a new formula for regular Coke. And they codenamed this Project Kansas.
Yeah.
Now, do you know any guesses as to why they called it Project Kansas?
No idea.
Well, what I read was the name was a tribute of sorts to a famous photo of William Allen White drinking a Coke. White once described Coke as a, quote, a sublimated essence of all that American stands for. A decent thing, honestly made, universally distributed, conscientiously improved with the years. And this photograph appeared in an issue of Life magazine in 1938 and was hanging on the walls in the Coca-Cola executive offices.
Fascinating.
So that's why they called it Project Kansas. Yeah. Okay, this project ultimately led to the development of 7X100. And this was the flavor that they ended up developing as sort of the new Coke. And according to Coke's own taste tests, it performed much better than traditional Coke and Pepsi.
Okay.
When given to people blind, and as you said in a taste test, when given to people blind, new Coke was preferred versus old Coke 55 to 45.
Wow.
When consumers were told, well, listen to this is, I think, even more crazy. When consumers were told the identification of which was which, the gap actually increased to 61-39.
Wow.
You would have thought it would have gone the other way, right?
Yeah, sure.
The executive team assumed that this was the energy they needed to take over the market and were very concerned about, quote, splitting the market and essentially guaranteeing the number one sales spot to Pepsi. So instead of coming out with two products, they wanted to do a complete swaparoo. And that's why they didn't want to do a Coke and then like a new Coke.
Sure.
They wanted to just bring out new Coke.
There was also, I know a little bit about the history of this. There was actually also a feeling that they couldn't put the Coke name on too many products. That's why the diet version of Coke originally was called Tab, because they thought there would be consumer confusion if they had the Coke name on a whole bunch of...
Tab was a separate product. Wasn't Tab a totally separate product?
Tab was like a diet version of Coke because they didn't want to call it Diet Coke.
They did it first and then called it Diet Coke?
Later, they had Diet Coke. And by the way, there are some like 43 products now with the name Coke on it. And customers are not in no way confused.
Tab still exists, right?
Nope, it was discontinued at the end of 2020.
I did not know that.
And people were quite upset about it.
Of course they were. I'm sure you've got some crazy zealots, Tab zealots.
Coke is shutting down a lot of brands that perform very, very lightly
Poorly.
like that.
Yeah.
And they've kept around for historical reasons, and they're finally doing some cleanup on what
Well,
they
as you
own.
know, my wife only has one vice, and it's Cherry Coke.
Yeah.
And if they ever stop making that, I'm completely and utterly fucked.
Does she like Cherry Coke Zero? Does she like Cherry Coke Full Sugar? Does she like Mexican Cherry Coke that has the cane
Coke
sugar?
Zero. I don't know if
There's so many different kinds.
I don't know if they have a Mexican Cherry Coke with cane sugar. We've looked. I've never seen one.
Yeah.
I'm not sure that exists. If I brought home Cherry Coke Zero, I might as well go sleep out in the trailer. Like, there's no point.
Oh, she wouldn't drink that? She
Fuck
can tell the
no.
difference.
She would pour it down the drain while staring at me and not blinking. Like, there's zero chance. I am like the guy in Braveheart, the fucking lead in Braveheart. I'm spacing on his name.
Mel Gibson?
Mel Gibson. Yeah. I'm like Mel Gibson in the film where he's constantly buying Catcher in the Rye every time he sees it out in public. It's like
Sure.
That's me with Cherry Coke now. I am constantly buying it for her. If
She
it's on
wants
sale,
full sugar Cherry Coke, and it has to be the corn syrup sugar.
it is literally her only vice. It just has to be Cherry Coke, and then whatever they put in, it doesn't matter. They could fucking.
But she can, if you blind taste her, she can tell the difference between Cherry Coke and Cherry Coke Zero.
Oh, sir. First of all, she probably wouldn't even get it past her lips, and she would know. All right.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, and you know those little freestyle machines, the freestyle machines that are like really cool. These are printer cartridges
I love
for flavor.
those. That's why I go to AMC theaters, by the way.
Woman loves Cherry Coke. Will not drink it out of that machine. Terrible.
Oh no, I love that machine.
Completely tastes the difference. Can't do it.
Yeah,
Won't do it.
It's totally different, but it's still
And
great.
totally unrelated, Christmas came early for her because last week In-N-Out announced that they are adding Cherry Coke to their menu, which is like,
Oh man,
for her, it's taken me 15 years of being with this woman just to get her to eat the fries. She'd always bitch about In-N-Out. And then I finally would get her extra well fries, and she's like, oh, I guess these are okay. I'm like, okay, they're little sticks of crack cocaine. What the fuck's wrong with you? They're amazing.
But now she can get the Cherry Coke, so she'll be happy.
Apparently it's coming. So anyway, on April 23rd, 1985, Coca-Cola Company Chairman and CEO Roberto Gagliazza stepped before the press, gathered at New York City's Lincoln Center to introduce the new formula, which he declared to be, quote, smoother, rounder, yet bolder, a more harmonious flavor.
Yeah.
The press, however, said what Goizzetta couldn't admit. New Coke tasted sweeter and more like Pepsi.
Yeah.
He was quoted saying, some may choose to call this boldest single marketing move in the history of the packaged good business, Goizzetta said. We simply
That's
call
what
it...
he said? Wow.
Oh, it gets worse. We simply call it the surest move ever made.
Wow. We simply call it the biggest mistake ever in the history of business.
Well, I'm going to question that at the end, right?
I'll question that too, because
let's
actually...
leave that at a second. Yeah,
Right,
exactly.
right. There are great things that came
part
from
of
it, for
why I
sure.
want to tell this story. Coca-Cola President Donald Keogh echoed the certainty, quote, I've never been as confident about a decision as I am about the one we're announcing today.
Sure.
So they went into this thing headstrong. Bad news is it turns out their confidence was misplaced. However, good news, it wouldn't take very long for them to learn that it was misplaced.
Oh my goodness,
right?
the letters they got. Did you read
yeah.
about this?
Oh, no, yeah, you're about to hear about it. While these Coke executives toasted each other with cans of new Coke, the news was already beginning to fall flat. On the New York Stock Exchange, shares of Coca-Cola dropped, while those of its rival, Pepsi, rose. Pepsi gave its employees the day off and declared victory in full-page newspaper ads that boasted, quote, after 87 years of going at it eyeball to eyeball, the other guy just blinked, which I think is fantastic. Yeah. New Coke left a bitter taste in the mouth of the company's loyal customers. Within weeks of the announcement, the company was fielding 5,000 angry phone calls a day.
Sure.
By June, that number grew to 8,000 calls calls a day, a volume that forced the company to hire extra operators.
Well, the letters were gut-wrenching. Some of them were like, "You're playing with my childhood."
Yeah, some
people really were upset.
So some highlights from some happy customers of the day include, quote, "I don't think I'd be more upset if you were to burn the flag in our front yard." One disgruntled drinker wrote, right?
Sure.
This is probably my favorite. It says, "My little sister is crying because Coke changed, and she said that she is not going to stop crying every day until you change back. I am getting tired of hearing her now. If you don't change, I'll sue, even if I'm just 11. And the best part about this quote is it's completely misspelled.
so
when I'm reading, I'm
awesome.
like, what the fuck? Who wrote it? And then you're like,
He's
oh, okay,
11,
this kid was 11. But he's just so angry that his little sister won't stop crying.
That's adorable.
An Air Force officer explained that he was originally planning to have his ashes buried in a Coca-Cola can, but was now reconsidering, which I have a lot of questions about. But I thought that was, that's kind of a big deal, right? Like eternally.
Might take a 6-pack of Coca-Cola cans.
Sure. But like he wants to eternally be buried in a Coca-Cola can, and now he's like, you know what? I don't know anymore. Like,
I'm rethinking that. I'm rethinking that whole thing.
There were grassroots groups such as the, quote, Old Cola Drinkers of America that staged protests.
Sure.
Consumers poured the contents of new Coke bottles into sewer drains, which I'm not really sure who's winning there, but I'm pretty sure it's Coca-Cola.
Right.
One Seattle consumer even filed suit against the company to force it to provide the old drink. There's a story about a Coke delivery man in Georgia who was attacked by an angry woman with an umbrella as she screamed, "You bastard, you ruined it. It tastes like shit." And supposedly, there was a nearby Pepsi driver who was laughing, and he was then also berated by the woman, and she said, "You stay out of it. This is a family business. Yours is worse than shit," which I have no idea if this is true, but still the fact that story is told is fascinating to me. Just hysterical. Anyway, the point is that this outrage caught Coca-Cola executives by surprise. They had hardly made a rash decision, right? It's not like they had unsupported data. They had performed 190,000 blind taste tests on U.S. and Canadian consumers. The problem, though, is that the company had underestimated loyal drinkers' emotional attachment to the brand. Never did its marketing research...
all emotional.
Right? Yeah. Never did its market research testers ask subjects how they would feel if the new formula replaced the old one. Great little quote here, by the way, as an aside. Fidel Castro called it evidence of the failure of American capitalism.
Well, he's not wrong. He was right there.
I mean,
Fidel didn't get a lot right, but he got that right.
I mean, really? Because they changed the formulation of a drink? We're calling it the failure of capitalism? Like, wow, all right.
Can I tell you, in my childhood at that age, it was very clear to me, and I spent basically every penny I had buying cheap Coca-Cola shares.
Buying cheap Coca-Cola
because
wow,
you knew they still had the recipe.
Yeah, sure.
It's not like they tore up the other old recipe and threw it away.
Yeah.
So you knew they could come back to it.
You mean after it took a dive?
You wanted the shares to take the worst dive they could possibly take.
Of course.
You wanted the perceptions of the company to be as bad as they could be.
Sure.
They still had the old recipe. It wasn't like they burned it.
Were you the kid out there pouring the new Coke down to the sewer?
No.
Was that you? This shit's terrible. No, you weren't trying to.
No, and as a shareholder, I would have been totally fine with that.
I think that would be called a dump and pump at that point, right?
As I always say, I don't care if you drink the Coca-Cola. Just crack one open.
Just buy it. Just buy it. You don't have to drink it. Just buy it. That's all I'm asking. 79 days after their initial announcement, Coca-Cola executives once again held a press conference on July 11th, 1985. This time to announce a mea culpa and the return of the original formula under the label, quote, Coca-Cola Classic.
Sure.
Right?
We've never been so sure of anything in our lives. I mean, we're going to take it back. No, we're sorry.
So Keogh, Coca-Cola's president, said, this is the guy who said that he was never sure of anything more in his life than this. He said, our boss is the consumer and we want them to know we're really sorry. Which I think is kind of like a heartfelt, like, hey, we fucked this up.
You can make mistakes in life so long as you apologize
totally.
and make amends.
The news was so momentous that television networks broke into normal programming with special reports. And I didn't know that. I didn't remember that.
I didn't know that either.
Peter Jennings himself interrupted General Hospital to announce the return. Isn't that crazy? Like, imagine the target audience. That
actually is crazy.
Like, General Hospital had to be at its peak of its game in 1985, and Peter fucking Jennings gets on to announce the return of Coke. Like, I got to find that video and put it in the show notes. Coca-Cola Classic quickly outsold New Coke, and within a few months had returned to its position as the top-selling sugar cola, ahead of Pepsi,
Yeah.
even though both beverages were advertised at once. Classic Coke went for this sort of classic Americana, right? They called it the red, white, and you.
Yeah.
While New Coke tried to get consumers to, quote, catch the wave of the future and went for, as executive Brian Dyson said, high-tech promotion with highly contemporary imagery.
Yeah.
And Max Headroom was even enlisted as part of the new pitch.
I remember that.
And I put one of those ads in the show notes. You know, you can say, and I'm going to question this a little more here at the end, but you can say that millions were wasted on the New Coke campaign, far more than Classic, but New Coke kept sort of, you know, this downward slope to a 3% market share. The final dagger was stabbed when McDonald's swapped formulas from New Coke back to Classic.
Sure.
And the company ended up rebranding the new formula to Coke 2 in 1990 before it was eventually abandoned in 2002. I had no idea they kept selling this shit until 2002.
Yeah, I didn't know it lasted that long either. Was it different at different bottlers, or was it the same across the line?
I'm assuming it was the same bottlers, but I don't know. That's a really good question. I don't remember seeing this product even after the early 90s. Like, it felt like it just vanished off Earth.
I don't either.
So in spite of the blowback, Coca-Cola emerged from the fiasco with its market position actually strengthened as consumers rediscovered their attachment to the iconic brand. And moreover, in 2019, Coca-Cola actually re-released a very limited run of New Coke, which I vaguely remember, but I did not get any. Despite over $4 million being blown in the New Coke debacle, it was more than made up for it by the
$4 million. Is that
despite
bucks?
$4 million being blown in the New Coke debacle, it was more than made up for by the increased numbers around Classic Coke. But it was essentially an unpredicted accident. And this quote I've got here is, the simple fact is that all the time and money and skill poured into consumer research on the new Coca-Cola could not measure or reveal the deep and abiding emotional attachment to the original Coca-Cola felt by so many people. This is Co talking.
Yeah.
He said the blunder was so colossal that some thought it must have been an intentional marketing gimmick. Some cynics say that we planned the whole thing, Co said. The truth is we're not that dumb and we're not that smart. That was a great quote.
By the way, I think the actual flavor is better of the original Coke.
The classic?
To me, the Coke Classic is more in balance. It has sour, it has sweet, it has, all of the things that
Sure.
I don't get tired when I drink Coca-Cola. I can have 3 or 4 or 5. It doesn't really, I limit myself because I'm not crazy. But
You're not my wife.
I don't get tired of drinking it as opposed to other try doing that with an Orange Crush. I mean, you can't do it. You drink one and you absolutely can't do it.
I mean, I distinctly remember when I met my future wife, and I was like, Coke, Pepsi, whatever, it's the same shit. She's like, oh no, it's not. And then I started paying attention to it, and I was like, oh yeah, these are totally different. Yeah. And I've never been like, I would have a cherry Coke now and again, but never really cared for it. And then she's completely gotten me hooked on this shit because it's all that I have in my house. Yeah. So like, I'll be like, oh, there's a cherry Coke, I'll have one of those. There's parts of that story that I've never heard before, but that's like the general gist of it. There's these conspiracy theories floating around, and I found a little bit of information on one that I thought was kind of fun, and I think you're really going to enjoy. So I'm going to share this with you.
Okay.
So not only do folks still believe that this whole sort of Coca-Cola planned this conspiracy, even though, as you heard Co say, that was not the case.
Yeah, but they clearly didn't. They clearly didn't plan it.
But some people still believe that the Coke 2 debacle was an engineered smokescreen that Coke needed to provide cover for the introduction of high fructose corn syrup into the tasty beverage.
Did those things happen at the same time?
No. So we have actual facts that tell us this is not the case. And there's a couple things in here that I think you're going to love. So I want to just run you through this really quickly. First off, bottlers in the United States had, since 1921, been working under a contract with Coca-Cola that provided the following. 1, the syrup used in bottling would contain a minimum of 5.32 pounds of sugar per gallon. Which, holy shit.
Yeah. Sure.
2, the maximum charge would be $1.30 per gallon. And 3, the price could change based on market price of sugar. In other words, it adjusted for inflation by tying it to sugar, right? Now, this price formula only adjusted on sugar, so it didn't account for all inflation. And by the late 1970s, Coca-Cola was starting to feel a squeeze. So they proposed a 1978 amendment as a remedy to the contracts. 90% of their bottlers signed it, as there was an extra amendment for if the, quote, sugar element as a generic item was subject to a change in market price. And high fructose corn syrup was definitely cheaper and already being used for other affiliated beverages like Sprite. They already had high fructose corn syrup and Sprite.
You got government funding. I mean, there was actually subsidies for corn.
Yeah. So it was clear that in 78, Coca-Cola was thinking of this. And 2 years later, in January of 1980, the bottlers who had signed the agreement started reaping monetary benefits as Coca-Cola switched to a 50-50 formula between sugar and high fructose corn syrup.
It's all sugar, but cane sugar.
Yeah. Sorry. Yeah. When I say sugar, I mean cane sugar. So 1982 saw the introduction of Diet Coke, as I mentioned earlier. And with that came a giant legal kerfuffle, as it was Coke's position that the newness of the beverage indicated any syrup could be made under a new contract. and the bottlers thought the old ones still applied.
Sure.
A protracted decades-long legal battle resulted, and the disclosures required as part of the lawsuit confirmed the timing of this high fructose corn syrup introduction. So we knew for fact that it was in earlier. The amount of high fructose corn syrup was increased to 75% in February of 1984, and then finally to 100% in November of the same year, of 84. So that was months before the new Coke launch in 1985. So they had already put that in play long before this was introduced, which, again, that's like one of these things that folks always say, oh, that's all they did it for was a smokescreen. It's like, nope, that was in line.
No, they'd already done it.
Long before. So I vaguely remember parts of this story because I was alive then, but I did not know the depths of the detail of one, how bad this fuck up was, and two, the rebound that they got, right? That nice rebound that came out of this.
They were carrying the Coca-Cola logo on their books at $25,000 as if that was its total value.
Guys, I'll pay you $26 for it right now.
Right. And it was obviously worth billions of dollars. And around that time, that when they created that new version of Coke and realized, oh my gosh, we can put the name on lots of different Coca-Cola products.
Sure.
Suddenly they had to carry the logo and the name at a more realistic value, which is in the billions.
Sure. Yeah. That must have helped their equity value just a little.
It was an accounting error.
Sure. Yeah. Not in their favor.
Yeah.
No, it's a crazy story to me that this is how this transpired. I mean, I remember the Headroom ads, right? I remember the debacle. I don't remember
Max Headroom. Yeah,
Max Headroom. I don't remember Jennings. Like, I don't remember that level of insanity.
Oh, I don't remember that either. But I would have watched the soap opera. So
but I remember it controlling the news cycle back then for sure. And I also didn't appreciate. I mean, I had much less concept of time at that age. But I also didn't appreciate that this all happened in the span of like 2.5 months.
Oh yeah,
like this whole thing tipped to tail. All of this drama.
It was a little longer than that.
It was like April to July. It was 79 days.
Yeah.
Basically 3 months. Less than 3 months that tipped the tail, and they're like, oh yeah, oopsies. And then they stuck with the Coke Classic branding forever.
I didn't realize that. I didn't realize how long Coca-Cola Classic stuck around.
I think it was around at least through when Coke 2 was disposed of.
Yeah.
I don't think does a current can of Coke say Coke Classic on it?
I think it says original taste.
Yeah. So,
by the way, the Coca-Cola Company has some 3,600 beverages in its portfolio.
Holy shit. I mean, I know they have like truly
900 of which are diet beverages.
Wow, that's nuts.
Most of them don't distribute all around the world. They just distribute in certain parts of the world.
This is something I want to talk about in the show at some point. I'm not really prepared to do it now, but they own the Simply brand too, don't they?
They do.
It's like Simply Orange, Simply Lemonade, like you see it in the grocery stores. The reason I think this is interesting is I'm like, how do you make consistent orange juice that is not from concentrate, not frozen for this long? And I looked at this before we even had this show, and the answer was pretty fascinating. They pump orange juice into these temperature-controlled vats. They put I think it's like a nitrogen float on to keep it from interacting with oxygen. And they just store orange juice in like Florida for months until they need to bottle it.
The magic of Coca-Cola, the magic of the Coca-Cola Corporation is that they're not shipping water all around the globe.
Yeah.
They're shipping syrup to bottlers. So I don't know how that works necessarily with the orange juice.
I got to think
like Minute Maid would probably be a great Coca-Cola product because it's syrup and then you're shipping it to somebody who can then
you're making
add water to it locally. Yeah.
Anyway, it's pretty cool that you knew a bit about this story, a lot more than I expected you to. You were paying attention. It is fascinating to me. I also think it's fascinating that they've been able to keep what is basically the formulation.
A similar flavored beverage,
yeah.
Yes.
And not only just keep it over time, but keep it to themselves. I mean, you've got plenty of cola competitors.
Richard Branson tried to come out with virgin cola.
I remember that.
Remember that?
I do remember
that. Was always the amazing thing to me. You could take $1 billion to the Coca-Cola business and say, go ahead, try and make a dent with $1 billion. And you can't do it. Absolutely can't do it.
Yeah.
All right, we have to get out of here, but quickly before we do, have you seen or read anything good this last week?
I always love that you ask me this question like I'm going to have
Happy New Year, by the way.
Oh, yeah. Happy New Year. We should have said that earlier. We said it earlier at the top of the
But I enjoy saying it again.
It was good. Man, did Anderson Cooper get drunk at New Year's?
Did he?
Shirt off, just swinging around his head?
I never watched that show.
Oh, man, it's the best. It's not as much fun. They don't let him drink anymore, but when they let him drink, it was great. There's a blooper reel of literally at the desk, like at the news desk, Anderson Cooper just giggling uncontrollably.
Yeah.
And it's one of my wife's favorite things to watch. It's just like these dumb things that would come up. I mean, he's so serious all the time.
Sure.
And then it's just like these silly things that come up and he literally loses it. He cannot compose himself.
So is that what you saw or read this week?
No, you know what I saw? I saw hours and hours of desert driving to and from Arizona for the holidays.
Oh yeah.
You see a lot of sand and a lot of dirt.
Do you like seeing all that desert?
It doesn't do much for me. Not when I'm driving.
Oh my gosh, I just love it.
Maybe if I was in the passenger seat. you're wrestling with a lot of big rigs.
I could keep driving right on through to New Mexico and on to, I could drive to Texas, and it just every foot of that drive, and I'll say that in imperial units just so that you can understand it.
Have you ever driven through like Nebraska?
Yeah, sure.
It's terrible.
Yeah, it doesn't do as much for me as
it's just
that desert route to me is just magical.
Yeah, I mean, look, there's some really cool stuff to see for sure. I just feel like it's on loop.
It is on loop.
I literally tell my kids on this drive, I did this again on this trip. I was like, hey, do you guys want to time travel? And they're like, what's that? I'm like, that's when you close your eyes and go to sleep and you wake up in the new place, which is basically, I think, the way to do it.
Yeah, sure.
Right? And they just magically appear.
And did they do it?
No, of course they didn't. I'd much rather stay awake and yell random things.
Sure.
Anyway, no, I have not seen anything very cool or interesting, but I'm sure you have. What have you seen?
I saw Wonka, Timothy Chalamet,
cool.
Olivia Colman, and Hugh Grant as the Oompa Loompa, stealing absolutely every scene he's in. With dreams of opening a shop in a city renowned for its chocolate, a young and poor Willy Wonka discovers the industry is run by a cartel of greedy chocolatiers. It's the origin story of Willy Wonka, and it's absolutely delightful. Absolutely delightful. Wonka in theaters now.
How do you squish Hugh Grant down to make him Oompa Loompa size?
Go see it.
Was it really cool?
You will. Oh, it's great.
Is it? Does it?
I don't mean the whole movie is great. I'm specifically answering your question about Hugh Grant as the Oompa Loompa.
Steals the show?
Totally. He's incredible.
And does it have the same sort of creepy vibe that the original Gene Wilder one did, where you're just like, whoa, this is kind of trippy, kind of weird?
Kind of in a different way. It's
Okay.
in a little different way, but it definitely is, it's definitely a very offbeat. It's fun.
I mean, I can remember the first time
I love the Gene Wilder one.
Seeing Willy Wonka as an adult, the scene where they go in the tunnel, you're just like, man, this is kind of dark for kids. And I watched it as a kid and loved it. And you're just like, this is kind of nuts. And you're just like,
there's nothing really like that. There are some things that are very dark. I just go see the movie. I'm not going to.
I'm in. I will see it sometime in the next 1 to 6 years.
That's the episode.
Thank you for joining us for all this nonsense. It's really terrible podcast now in season 2 from The Awful Company. Visit us on the web at nonsense.productions. I'm CJ Little.
I'm Jeff Parker.
If you like this program, please follow, download, subscribe, and like at Apple Google Podcast, Amazon Music, iHeartRadio, Spotify, or our favorite Overcast, or wherever you might get your podcast from.
Podcastindex.org. Special thanks to our floor director, Frank Miles.
Oh, Frank, you're the best. We'll be here every Thursday morning for more nonsense. Please join us.
Except for when it's Friday.